Right, okay, so part 2 of the video then. We've talked about why you want to look at leadership theory, and we've also talked about definitions. Let's look at some of the theories that are out there. We'll take a real quick whistle-stop tour through some of the theories so you can get an idea of the development, where they've come from, where we're at now, and also we'll start to use that as a construct for our leadership camp when we get around to it. This is about the third time I've done this video, so hopefully it records this time and I don't have to go through this again. Okay, so leadership theories and discussions on leadership have been ongoing for a long time. Plutarch wrote his book Parallel Lives thousands of years ago, about 2,500 years ago I think. In it he paralleled famous Roman and famous Greek figures from history, such as Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. It was more of a moral take on things, but he wanted to understand what made these people, these great figures of history, tick. What made them so successful, and compare and contrast them. He talked about Mark Antony and lots of other people that I can't pronounce. So it's well worth a look, but it just shows that for thousands of years we've been studying what makes a successful leader. But the academic study of it tends to start with what's known as great man theories in around the 19th century with people like Thomas Carlyle. So great man theory, what they're essentially saying is here that there are innate characteristics that great men are born with, and women obviously, that make them a leader, such as charisma, intelligence, people skills, things like this. You're born this way, it's the way you're wired, these are the characteristics that make a successful leader, and that's what you need. Great man theory developed into what would be called trait theory of leadership, where they tried to focus on what exact traits made the best leader. So the image behind me talks about intelligence, people skills, creativity, competency, trustworthiness, things like this. So the field started to focus in on these exact traits that made the best leader. There were empirical studies done, many, that really tried to nail down what traits were most successful. But the problem with both of these schools was that it was still very much characteristics and traits, what you are born with. Now, the big step that they really wanted to get to was, do you have to be born a leader? They wanted to start broaching the field of, can you be trained? So the behavioural theories started to come about, where they were looking for specific behaviours. What behaviours was it that when a leader did these behaviours, that made them the most successful form of leader? Now the idea being is if you can isolate what behaviours people respond to in a leadership context, once you isolate those behaviours, you can copy them. You can train those behaviours into people. So this was an attempt to move beyond the great man and trait theory that you have to be born this way. It was a way to more of a management style. You could train people, you could educate them in how to be a leader. And that's what a lot of people sought, because obviously not everyone is born a leader. So that's where the behavioural theories came from. But some people felt that the great man trait, behavioural, was still very much focused on the leader. And that was an inappropriate focus. They felt that they actually need to take the context into account. So this is where the contingency model comes in. Because their argument is that a great man, no matter what traits he has and what he's not going to be a phenomenal leader in every possible context. Churchill is the paragon example of this. You know, wartime leader par excellence, powers of rhetoric, oratory, incredible resolve, and just that image of a wartime leader. But immediately after the war, what happens? He loses the general election because people don't feel he is a peacetime leader, that he's got a grip of the theory of consensus perhaps, or the finer detail of things. So he felt he was a wartime leader. You know, cometh the hour, cometh the man, and different situations require different leaders. This is what the contingency model wants to bring in. It sort of says, look, you know, the behaviours that you've identified, these specific leadership skills and styles, they will apply to different contexts. So in a high pressure military combat situation, you will need different leadership behaviours, skills and styles than you will in an office setting well away from the front line of combat. And it tried to bring that contingent element of where are you, what is the context, into the leadership equation. However, there was still an element missing to this, and theories like PathGoal tried to highlight the fact that there was a group that was kind of being left out of the leadership discussion. Obviously the context plays a huge part, obviously the leader plays a huge part, but what about the subordinate, what about the team, what about those being led? They have a vote in this as well. So the PathGoal theories and other such started to really look at the subordinates' motivation and what they were going to get out of this, and bring that into the equation as well. That was a really key development in leadership theory. There are more theories. A good example of bringing that subordinate motivation in was a leader-member exchange theory, which came out, and they really wanted to look at it in terms of a didactic relationship, a two-way exchange between the leader and the subordinate that was key to understanding successful leadership situations. You know, why were some people willing to be led by certain leaders? What does the leader have to offer in exchange for the support of the subordinates? So this, many people deemed a transactional form of leadership. You know, if you do what I say, I will pay and employ you. If you do what I say, I ensure you success and victory in battle. You know, you can train people to do that, and they have command authority in the military to, with their rank, to give that and to achieve that transaction. These theories have developed, and a recent one that I quite that interests me is servant leadership. It's this idea that not only do you need to have an exchange between the subordinate and the leader, but actually the best leaders are the ones who are servants to their subordinates. All they care about is empowering their subordinates for the development of their subordinates. They provide vision, they provide direction, but they've got very little ego, and they're just there to inspire their people. They serve their subordinates for the betterment of their career. I've seen examples of this. I've had bosses who cared more about whether their men were promoted than they themselves were promoted. And to be honest, I always thought that was quite good. As one of those leadership experiences and observations that I took away as a young pilot on the squadron, was that the best bosses were the ones who were less concerned about their promotion and more concerned about yours. So servant leadership I've always found interesting. One you will definitely meet is the work of John Adair at IoT. So action-centered leadership is a form of functional leadership. There are certain leadership theories that are for more practical environments, more pragmatic environments. And action-centered leadership is deemed one that's very appropriate for the military environment. It's taught at most of the major military colleges, and it's the balancing of the task, the team and the individual. And the theory basically goes that when all three are addressed by the leader, and you care about what the individual's needs are, you care about what the team needs are, but you also are cognizant of what the task is and requires. When you can marry all of those three together, that is the sweet spot in the middle where you're at peak performance. If you ignore any element of it, you ignore the individual or you ignore the team, you're in big trouble. And because it's a functional leadership, an action-centered leadership, if you ignore the task, that's a big no-no. My friend who was an instructor up at Cranwell, that was one of the ways you failed your leads. If you did not pay enough attention to the task itself, that is almost certainly a fail when you get to IoT and you're doing leadership in the field. Further developments to that, a lot of people talk about authentic leadership now. Authentic leadership, the idea that to be a good leader, you must practice what you preach. If you're talking about AP1, you're talking about RISE, respect, integrity, service, excellence. If you want to be a good leader in the RAF, you have to show respect, integrity, service and excellence. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite. Your men and your subordinates will see this, and it will make you less of a leader in our eyes. And I quite like this. It's not easy by any means, but the recent theories on leadership really sort of go for the authentic leadership, because it's a way to get that transformational leadership. It's a way to get to the vision, providing a vision and real sort of inspirational leadership, is if you practice what you preach and stick to your values. Brené Brown is a lady from Texas who talks about leadership a lot. There's a lot of TED Talks about her. Dare to Lead is a great book where she talks about the importance of values to leadership. And to build that relationship with your subordinates and be a transformational leader, you must adhere to your values, but also you've got to let people know what your values are. You've got to have the courage to make yourself vulnerable, to open up those relationships and tell people what you value. Learn what they value, understand what they value. And if you all have a similar value system, which we do in the military with our core ethos, that will help you become a transformational leader. But you've got to have the courage to make yourself vulnerable, to have these difficult conversations. Okay, the integrated psychological approach is a very up-and-coming field. I think it's Schooler is the guy who's... this is a new one on me, but it's a development of behavioural economics. Outstanding work done by Kahneman and Tversky that won them the Nobel Prize, where they take psychological theory and apply it to the field of economics. It's called behavioural economics. They won the Nobel Prize for it, and it's fantastic stuff. Their book, Thinking Fast and Slow, brings across many of their theories. We've discussed them on the Human Factors nights: biases, heuristics, unconscious bias, availability heuristic, all these things. Now, what Schooler's trying to do is he's trying to say you need to bring that thinking and psychological understanding to the workplace if you want to be a great leader. You need to understand yourself. Socrates, know thyself. You need to understand yourself and understand your people on that psychological level. And when you can do that, you can tie together the benefits, all the good stuff from the trait approach of leadership, behavioural, and also relationship-based, values-based, authentic leadership. You can tie all these things together, but to do that on a psychological level, you must attempt to understand yourself and your people to be able to do that. So that's very new, and it's probably the sort of stuff that the Tedder Academy are working on up at Cranwell, and you'll be exposed to at IoT. But as you can see, there's a lot of stuff out there. Okay, there's a lot of theories out there, can make your head ache a little bit, but McChrystal sums it up quite nicely in his books of leadership. He gets to a working definition of a complex system of relationships between leaders, followers, in a particular context that provides meaning to its members. And I think he gets to the crux of it. Every leadership situation will be different, and every example of leadership will be different. But if you don't take into account your followers, who you are as a leader in the context, and how those things change in each situation, you'll never be an effective leader. The best leaders are aware of those forces and how they're changing, and they play them to their best strengths. So that's a good working definition I liked, and I would strongly recommend that book for you. Where we want to take this? So we want to have a practical leadership camp where we get you leading on some command tasks out in the field. Some of them are quite strenuous, some of them involving high ropes, some of them involving dragon boat racing, etc. But what we want to build on a foundation, and that foundation is based on the theory. So we'll explore the leadership theory a bit more on the leadership camp,